as I'm recording this, we are about, I think, 3 or 4 days before an entire year of daily uploads, which there's, been some hiccups. Thank you, YouTube. But for the most part, it has been every single day and date has had a upload on this channel. Sometimes it's been really close because of me. And other times, I actually have it planned out for a couple weeks. Like this is being recorded early, but it's still a few days away, and I want to talk about it because I feel like it's not necessarily like I feel accomplished, but I feel like I set out to do a goal and I succeeded. And whether I ultimately stick to it, I'm going to keep trying, but we'll see if my effort uh, either increases or just stays the same. We'll see. But we have every single roguelike that I played for the channel with the intention of playing through a decent chunk in a playlist format. And I want to rank them all because I did play quite a few. Some of these are very similar to each other. There's a couple survivor like games, which, like Slime 3K, uh, I'm missing potato. There it is. You have also Dash Survivors, which we'll talk about. We have a couple odd ones that I didn't really get to highlight for that long. Uh, Time Tracker, which we'll explain, and Blueprints, which is relatively new, but I do want to rank it while we're here. Because at this point, I will have had you guys will probably have seen three parts of this, but by the point I'm doing this, I'm a little bit farther. And then we have like Poke Rogue, uh, which, and then we have kind of like the shooter genre, which is RoboQuest uh, and Revenge of the Mage. And then we have kind of like 2D, like platform esque elements with Neon Abyss, Angel Struck, and then the card games Wild Frost, Slay of the Spire. Slay of the Spire, Slay of the Spire. But I think that encapsulates all of them. We are going to try and go in order. I don't remember the exact order of the early stuff, but we're going to rank these. So let's talk about the very first one that actually was the third roguelike I ended up recording, and it ended up being the one that I preferred to actually upload, and that's Dash Survivor. If you don't know what Dash Survivor is, it is now a discontinued game on Steam that launched just over a year ago. Uh, and it was the first game that I recorded in a batch to kind of do this yearly or this daily upload for at least a year goal. And of the three roguelikes, this was the one that I think ended up the best. Uh, it it definitely hasn't aged great. I do think if they had kept at it, this would have grown into at least a worthy like contender to recommend in the roguelike genre. But now that it's kind of gone, it's just kind of a novelty. If you were there, you like the game, or you maybe hate the game. I do like a lot of the additives in the game. There's a bunch of achievements which I part of me wants to go back to a lot of these and maybe do like a full achievement rundown, like go and collect everything. And Dash Survivor is definitely up there where I might do it. There's a couple that I just won't touch because one, I'm either not good or I'm not interested. Dash Survivor kind of sits on the fence. It's very middle. It's decent to above average, but I wouldn't call it a good experience. Like it's not an A. It's just perfectly mid for this channel. Like if we're going on a bell, it's like pretty much middle of the pack. Uh, that doesn't mean it's a mid game. That's for C, but I think Dash Survivor sits there. I like the system. I think it had a lot of potential. There was a decent amount of content that I think was really well done and really player focused and just having fun. I feel like if they had extended that a little bit more into maybe a couple months before everything, I guess, happened, we would be talking about a way more successful and a way better game. But overall, it's not bad for being unfinished. Now, I think the next one we ended up playing was Poke Rogue, which I'm not gonna lie here. I think it's one of the best experiences that I do intend on going back differently, uh, eventually. But it came to the point where I was playing like 3 hours, and I kept having to cut a lot of it out because it's just a lot of basic stuff, and like eventually you speed up a lot of runs. But I felt like for video format, it's not uh, very good for the video format. I think it's one of those games that it kind of suffers from, like, you either stream or you play this by yourself, which we'll talk about quite a few of these actually that I think just are better by yourself. Uh, and Poke Rogue, I feel like it kind of sits in that camp. It can be fun in video form. I think of all of these, this is technically my most successful, based on like the averages of views versus the amount of parts in it. A couple of these do get like a lot higher. Like Dash Survivor is actually relatively high in comparison to some of the later ones, but that's because I don't like do thumbnails and stuff, and I'm also kind of lazy. So, but when it comes to like Poke Rogue, it's probably, I think, either the highest or the second highest. Um, but that's just the way it be. I do intend on going back to it. I have the original playlist locked into never updating again, but I have a new kind of idea for going back to it. That'll come up in the next month, maybe, and it won't be that long. But I do want to at least give it an attempt. I don't think I finished it in a video. I did finish it in a stream, so like that's the thing is I feel like as a video it doesn't really work, and that's why it's kind of this low. But I think the game itself is really cool, and I'm a huge Pokemon fan, so made sense. Uh, I think Rotato's actually next. See, this is where it gets really weird because I basically used Dash Survivor for like 20 parts in a row, and then started adding like stuff, so it becomes really like complicated later of when I started. But I think Rotato is next. I I think it's just a Survivor game. I do think it's a little better than Dash Survivor, but at the same time, it feels, I don't know what's the word. I feel like it's definitely like more of a cash-in roguelike than, I feel like Dash Survivor is of course cashing in on the Survivor like roguelike genre, or specific genre, kind of booming as time goes on. But ultimately, I do think like Brotato is the example of having interest and having like a lot of content in quote, but it's also kind of the laziness of it. I do like a lot of the builds. I think there's a lot of strategy. I'm not necessarily great at it, but I do think Brotato is good and fun. And it's usually very cheap, which is why I kind of recommend this a lot. A lot of these are actually really cheap, and I'll mention the ones that are kind of expensive. But uh, of of these two, I would definitely recommend Potato. If you like Survivors, I happen to think spoilers, it's the best one we're going to be talking about today. But there's also better options out there for the Survivors in general. You have, for example, Vampire Survivors is a great game, and there's a few others that have released since I stopped playing Potato that I do think kind of fill in this really nice gap. But yeah, that was it. I'm pretty sure the next one, and this might be wrong, is RoboQuest, which if you know anything about what, it's the one I've uploaded the most, and it's the one I've had the most fun. I've played this off video. I played this on stream. I probably have put in like, with all the parts and everything, like 50 hours, maybe a little less into it, which for a game that I discovered literally last year and have like, I haven't like marathoned it, which cool. It's also one of those ones that I don't really like killing off, because I've been looking at like eventually just stop playing this and not upload anything, but I love playing this game. I think it's really fun. I do think the builds are kind of limited, not based on like the not enough content, but just eventually some guns are too similar, some builds are too similar, and I do think there's a problem there. But I do think it has this sort of quality that, I'm gonna be honest, I don't think it's gonna be matched by any game here. I think RoboQuest happens to be my favorite roguelike that I've played for YouTube in general. And while while it's not my favorite roguelike, is definitely up there. It's probably in the top five. I think RoboQuest is incredible game. Uh, I said that really weird, but yeah, it's an incredible game. Next, I'm pretty sure the proper order is Angel Struck, which, surprise, surprise, I think this game is sick. Angel Struck was, I'm pretty sure that's right. I think Time Tracker is technically around here as well, but we'll get to that. I think Angel Struck itself is one of the. It's gonna always be a slept on game because uh, it doesn't have like this insane customization that you could find in a lot of roguelikes. But I do think it's just so tightly like knit as like an experience that if you have the money and you want to like spend 10 hours in a game, go through it and just have a normal experience that it is like not going to be played by a lot of people, I really do think Angel Struck is impressive. The only limitation, as I said earlier, is the content itself. I do think there's not an insane amount there. It gets a little repetitive, I'm not gonna lie, but at the same time, I don't really mind it. This came out in July of last year, and it doesn't have that many sales from what I understand, but it's only $6. And if I talk about games here, and the one I would recommend over even RoboQuest here is Angel Struck, because RoboQuest has enough fans. I like ultimately to bring more attention to Angel Struck. I think this is a very good game. And self plug in my own video, woo, if you aren't sure, I have a decent go through of the entire normal mode. I think hard mode, but not the hardest. And I go through a bunch of builds. I figure out some of the synergies, and you don't even have to watch that much if you just want to see if it's worthy of going into your library. I think Angel Struck is actually super addicting. I think I ended up with like 10 hours in this game, uh, or maybe 12, something like that. And the part of me still wants to go back and do a challenge for the hardest mode, but I just don't have the time to like get back into how I played. Time Tracker is gonna be the only detour that I think, and that's spoilers for the rest of the list. A lot of these are actually pretty good, but uh, Time Tracker is a game that I feel like had a lot of potential, but the designers themselves are, I don't know what their intentions are, but it feels like a waste your time game. There's a lot of stuff that's just there to waste your time, and it feels very, very not like fun. Quality of life is definitely needs to be increased. Some of the UI stuff is very like non-explained. The upgrade system itself is pretty poor, and uh, I have a lot of problems with Time Tracker. It's one of those games where at first glance I was really kind of excited to play, but by the second run I was disappointed. So please follow my advice. Don't get this game. I don't think it's good. Slay the Spire is technically next. This happens to be definitely up here. For a lot of people, they would probably put this in S tier, and I get it. For a lot of people, this would be S tier. I think it's because I happen to think that I jumped in a little too late in Slay the Spire. I've been recommended for like what 4 years now, I think, or something, by a bunch of people. And I finally ended up playing, and I played it for the channel, and it doesn't really work for the video, so that kind of like ruined my experience. Not to say ruined it, but it definitely tinted the experience. But still, a fantastic game. Even with this tinted experience, I do think like it is a great game. If you haven't tried Slay the Spire, I recommend it wholeheartedly. If you love card games and you love roguelikes, this is perfect. This is one of the best experiences you could have. And I'm very tempted to play the board game and buy and play the board game and see how that plays in a like a board game style. But yeah, Slay the Spire I do feel is not gonna always reach S tier to me because while there is like a lot of customization, I feel there was a lot of noob traps in Slay the Spire. Which is not to say there aren't noob traps in other roguelikes. I mean, Brotato had a few. But Slay the Spire, I feel like there was a bunch of cards that were straight up like, you read them and you're like, oh, that sounds really good. But then it just punishes you because you don't know what's ahead. Not saying it as like you don't know what's ahead because it's a mystery. No, because you literally haven't gone that far before. And so you just don't understand how card advantage and like picking up a card that can sit dead is really problematic. And it's just how the game is laid out. I do think once you're past that, it's a really good game. But I do think The first hour of Slay the Spire is really punishing for kind of no reason. But yeah, next we go. I think the proper order is actually Slime. This is going to be the most mid game on this list. I think this is the one I've been the most angry with by a long shot. This is also the one that I still have to. Somebody I don't know loves this game, and I keep having to block comments on videos every now and then, uh, or I have to just keep them hidden because I've blocked like a few accounts. It's the same guy, it's the same writing, but this game is the one with the most like anger from me. That's not to say it's inherently a bad game. The hitboxes are awful. The game synergy is fun. I love some of the weapons. I love like some of the interesting like synergies you could build. How you want to build the slime like characters are interesting and actually affect stuff. Like it's almost there, but the hitboxes, the levels being bullshit in super easy to super hard difficulties, and just that fucking music being the same for so long means this is incredibly repetitive, and it's not repetitive as in like Potato or even like Angel Struck. It's repetitive as in you're just gonna get trashed by bullshit, and you either stop playing or you keep going. And I do not recommend this game. I do think there's some quality here, and I do think honestly, if you were to buy it, it's not the worst decision you would make. But I personally would not recommend it. All right, so I think we're getting to the end here. We have Wild Frost, which I'm gonna be the guy to say it. I happen to think Wild Frost, for an experience, is a little better than Slay the Spire. Of course, Wild Frost is a kind of newer age. Slay the Spire is basically the same type of game, card game, but I happen to think it's much more noob friendly. There's a few kind of backhanded, like, oh, like certain statuses and not figuring out the game. It's not well explained sometimes, but I do think I like the approachability of this game a lot more. That's not to say it's easy, but I do feel like there's a lot more like cards put into your hand that you can kind of discard or use if you really want. For lack of a better analogy, there, I think Wild Frost is a pretty good experience though. But yeah, I have no more to say on that. I think that's the last A tier here because we're going to talk about Neon Abyss. So, Neon Abyss is interesting because I really feel like it's almost into A. Like, it's almost there. I feel like there's a lot of, like, options. I think the biggest problem, though, is the weapons being uh, so hit or miss. Like, a lot of the abilities are very fun, though there's not that big of a pool sometimes, which is really disappointing. The characters are interesting to a certain extent. The biggest problem, though, is just the weapons. As I said, weapons are very hit or miss, and some of them are just really, really bad. And if you get locked into a bad weapon, you can basically have a bad run. And unlike a lot of other roguelikes, for example, like RoboQuest, where there's other options available, yeah, you are going to ultimately need a better weapon. Uh, there's not much more. There are many more chances of a free weapon in there, or even Potato, or Angel Struck gain a little bit better synergies, or like all these games have a better option for weapons. And I feel like Neon Abyss has the problem of being too tunneled on a bad weapon and just losing the run, or a good weapon and going far into it or winning the run. And that's my problem with Neon Abyss. I do think it's a good game. I do recommend picking it up. Neon Abyss 2 is like, well, you can see in the thing, you can wish list it. I'm excited to see how that works, but yeah. Next we have, and this can either age very poorly or it can go on to be a fantastic pick. Uh, and of course, it's both shooters that are up here. I think Revenge of the Mage is barely beating out A tier. Now, I do want to preface this real quick. RoboQuest is like S plus. If I wanted to have this tier list look really stupid, I would have made it S plus. RoboQuest is insanely good. Revenge of the Mage, I think, is getting there. I think there's a lot of bugs in the game, and I think there's updates that need to happen to really make this a very successful and fulfilling roguelike. but I think it's almost there. I think there's just pieces. I think maybe having one more mage type or even one more like attack ability for all the mages would be sick. The crafting system is coming together. I do think there's enough slow progression. I've only played on medium, and I feel like the difficulty is actually relatively perfect. And while I've had a few bugs that ultimately lead into what I like to call bullshit, I do think like my past experience, which I haven't fully finished an entire medium run, I've had to back out or I've died on the very last twice. I do think it's a very like good difficulty. It is almost there at being good because if you're fast, if you know how to use spawns, you can get a little bit farther with easier stuff, get the experience, and it depends on how you want to build. The card system is actually pretty cool. I don't really like the limitations on reroll, and it really feels like some of those cards appear so much more often than each other that it becomes frustrating when you get three of the same cards like four times in 5 levels. Very annoying, but I do happen to think Revenge of the Mage is getting there. This is probably something, if it were to stop today, I would probably put at the bottom of A tier and it almost in B tier. It's probably very similar to Neon Abyss, but as of right now, with the hopes of more updates and potential fixes, I'm going to put this at a low S, and we'll see what happens. And then we get to talk about blueprints. For a lot of people, they probably have already seen parts of this. I know it was kind of circulating a decent bit, and it was pretty like popular for a bit. Uh, and I'm gonna, as of right now, I'm gonna put it above Revenge of the Mage. Now, this is mostly because I've only played like maybe 2.5 hours, so I haven't even gone that far. But this style of game, whereas you look at something like RoboQuest and like the art style and the music and all that, it kind of fits together. But it feels very similar to a bunch of other games that have gone previously. And Blueprints does have this, where the art style does feel similar to some games. I think I've mentioned them before, or like the sound design. But Blueprints has this vibe that I think is wholly unique for this time. And I do recommend picking this up if you have Game Pass. It's free on there. Please go play it and at least give it a shot. And if not, at least look at it. At least look at this game. I think if you're a puzzle enthusiast, this is really fun. I think I think it's a brain teaser that I would love to be able to play more and like marathon and actually take notes properly. But it's really stand out. And there's not much more I can say on that. I think it is one of the best experiences that I've kind of had in just vibe based, ignoring the mechanics of the game, like and everything around it, like the puzzles and stuff. I ultimately just it has the special vibe of like almost like a horror game that like psychological horror with like just a brain teaser constantly. It's so wild. I honestly think Blueprints is the one I would recommend the most to at least give like a couple runs to, just to see if it scratches your itch. Like I think it's special. Uh, but yeah, I think that's the list. This is a tier list of all the roguelikes I've played in the past year on this channel. Or at least played for the first time with the intention of making videos. Technically, Balatro was played for the channel, but I had played that before, and I never intended on making Balatro like a normal series because I don't think it works for videos, but it's good background when I'm talking about other stuff. And yeah, I think this is a good tier list. It also makes me realize we did play through a decent like roguelike catalog. We finished Dash Survivors, we finished Brotato. Neon Abyss is right around the corner to being completed. Angel Struck, we finished an entire run. We finished a couple of runs. Slay the Spire, we got to challenge like 3, I think it was, or something, and finished it. So technically, no, but yeah. Wild Frost, we did quite a bit. And RoboQuest, we've done quite a bit. We just need that +4. But yeah, so far, I'm pretty happy with this. We'll see what other roguelikes will join this tier list at some point, and whether I'll move stuff up and down depending on how it goes. But as of right now, I do intend on uploading continuous roguelikes, and we'll see how some of these continue to be uploaded or if they come out of retirement. But for right now, that's it. What was the favorite roguelike of all these that I've played throughout the year, if you watched any of it? And let me know, because maybe I will bring it back if it happens to be Slay the Spire or something, because I do love basically all these games up. I do think they're very fun. But yeah, with that, I'm going to call it. I'll talk to you guys later, and yeah, catch ya.